I was written out of my parents' will. At the family reunion, I handed them an envelope that made everyone fall silent. The secret I'd been keeping for 15 years changed everything. The warm summer breeze drifted through the open windows of my parents' sprawling Victorian home as I pulled into the driveway. The house looked the same as it always had. Immaculate gardens, freshly painted trim, and the large oak tree I'd climbed as a child still standing guard over the property. But I wasn't the same person who had left this place 15 years ago. And after today, nothing would ever be the same again. I checked my appearance in the rearview mirror, straightening my tie and running a hand through my hair. The manila envelope on the passenger seat seemed to stare back at me. Inside it was the culmination of 15 years of silence, of distance, of being the family outcast. I tucked it under my arm as I stepped out of my car, the expensive leather of my shoes crunching on the gravel driveway. The annual Peterson family reunion was already in full swing. I could hear the laughter and chatter from the backyard, the same ritual that had played out every summer for decades. Only in recent years, my invitation had become more of a formality than a genuine desire for my presence. I was the black sheep, after all, the one who had dared to walk away from the family business, to pursue a path that didn't align with my father's grand vision. "Michael, you actually came!" My sister Rebecca's voice carried a note of surprise as she spotted me entering through the side gate. Her perfect smile didn't reach her eyes. She was dressed impeccably as always, diamonds glittering at her ears and throat, the rewards of being the obedient daughter who had followed our father into his real estate empire. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, leaning in to kiss her cheek. She smelled of expensive perfume and privilege. "How are things, Becca?" "Wonderful. The company just acquired 3 new properties downtown, and Dad's talking about expanding to Chicago next year." Her eyes flicked to my modest but well-tailored suit. "And you? Still working at that startup, was it?" Before I could respond, my father's booming voice cut across the lawn. "Well, look who decided to grace us with his presence." Thomas Peterson, still commanding at 68, raised his glass in my direction. The gesture might have appeared welcoming to an outsider, but I recognized the subtle mockery in his tone. "Our wandering son returns." A ripple of polite laughter moved through the gathering of aunts, uncles, cousins, and business associates. My mother appeared at my father's side, her face tight with the strain of maintaining appearances. She offered me a small, tentative smile before quickly looking away. I moved through the crowd, accepting lukewarm greetings and answering the same questions I faced every year about my career and life choices. My cousin James, who had risen to become my father's right-hand man in my absence, clapped me on the shoulder with too much force. "Still haven't come to your senses, huh, Mike?" he asked, his voice lowered, but not enough to be truly private. "There's still a place for you, you know, though not quite as high up as it would have been if you'd stayed." "I'm doing just fine, James," I replied evenly, patting the envelope under my arm. "Better than fine, actually." "Is that so?" My father appeared beside us, his expression skeptical. "Hard to imagine how, given what you walked away from. Your sister just closed a $10 million deal last month." His eyes narrowed. "What exactly have you been doing with yourself all these years, son?" The weight of every dismissive comment, every comparison, every disappointed look from the past 15 years settled on my shoulders. But unlike before, it didn't crush me, because this time, I had come prepared. "Actually, Dad, I was hoping to discuss that with everyone today." He raised an eyebrow, clearly expecting another disappointment. "Oh, well, we're about to sit down for dinner. Maybe you can enlighten us all then." The long oak table on the patio had been set up with the same precision I remembered from childhood. Fine china, crystal glasses, silver cutlery polished to a mirror shine. I took my assigned seat, predictably at the far end from my father, who always sat at the head. My mother sat to his right, Rebecca to his left, with James and his wife next to her. The family hierarchy had never been subtle. Conversation flowed around me as the first course was served. Business successes, strategic acquisitions, and tales of outmaneuvering competitors dominated the discussion. Occasionally, someone would direct a question my way, usually tinged with condescension or pity. "So, Michael," my Aunt Vivian asked as she delicately cut into her salad, "are you still renting that apartment downtown? You know, your sister just bought the most gorgeous penthouse." I smiled. "Actually, I've moved recently." "Oh?" My mother perked up, hopeful. "Somewhere nice?" "Very nice," I replied simply, offering no further details. The envelope remained by my side, its presence a constant reminder of why I had come today. As the main course was served, my father stood to make his annual toast. Glass raised, he looked every bit the patriarch he had always styled himself to be. "To family," he began, "and to the legacy we continue to build together. Peterson Real Estate has had its most profitable year yet, thanks to the dedication and loyalty of those seated around this table." His gaze pointedly skipped over me. "I'm proud to announce that Rebecca will be taking over as CEO when I step down next year, with James as COO." Applause erupted around the table. Rebecca beamed, accepting congratulations with practiced grace. My mother looked at me quickly, then away, guilt flashing across her features. "And there's one more announcement," my father continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "Martha and I have recently updated our will. As we grow older, it's important to ensure that everything we've built is preserved and protected by those who value it." The implication hung in the air like a storm cloud. I felt eyes shifting toward me, some curious, others smug. "To that end," he continued, "the company's shares and the majority of our estate will pass to Rebecca, with provisions for James and others who have shown their commitment to our family's legacy." The silence that followed was deafening. No one looked at me directly, but I could feel their sideways glances, could practically hear their thoughts. Poor Michael, cut out entirely. But what did he expect? My father raised his glass higher. "To legacy and loyalty." "To legacy and loyalty," echoed around the table, voices enthusiastic, but eyes uncomfortable. As the toast concluded and conversation hesitantly resumed, I stood up. The scrape of my chair against the stone patio silenced the table once more. "I'd like to say something too, if I may," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. My father's expression was a mixture of annoyance and resignation. "Of course, Michael. The floor is yours." His tone suggested he expected either a petulant outburst or a desperate plea for reconsideration. I picked up the envelope and slowly walked to the head of the table. 15 years ago, I left this family in the path that had been laid out for me. You all thought I was running away from responsibility, from hard work, from commitment. I looked around at their faces, some curious, others dismissive. You wrote me off as a failure before I had even begun. "Michael," my mother began softly, but my father raised a hand to silence her. "Let him speak, Martha. Let's hear what excuse he's come up with after all these years." I placed the envelope on the table in front of him. "No excuses, Dad, just facts. Open it." With a contemptuous glance, he picked up the envelope and tore it open. Several documents slid out: financial statements, press clippings, photographs. He stared at them, his expression slowly shifting from dismissal to confusion to disbelief. "What is this?" he asked, his voice suddenly less certain. "When I left, I didn't just walk away from the family business. I walked toward something else." I gestured to the documents. 15 years ago, I used my trust fund, the only money I ever took from this family, to invest in a small tech company that was developing revolutionary energy storage solutions. Everyone told me it was risky, that I was throwing away good money. Sound familiar? Silence gripped the table as my father continued to examine the papers, his face growing paler by the second. "That company is now Green Horizon Technologies. We went public 3 years ago." I paused, letting the name sink in. "Our market cap hit $20 billion last month." Gasps rippled around the table. Green Horizon Technologies had been in the news constantly, a success story that had disrupted the entire energy sector. But I had kept my involvement quiet, operating under my middle name to avoid the Peterson connection. You own Green Horizon? Rebecca's voice was barely above a whisper. I'm the founder and majority shareholder, I confirmed. The photos there show our headquarters and some of our international offices. The financial statements detail my personal net worth. My father's hands were trembling slightly as he examined the statements. This says that I'm worth approximately $4.3 billion. I finished for him. More than Peterson Real Estate and all your personal assets combined, multiplied several times over. The silence that followed was absolute. Every eye at the table was fixed either on me or on the documents my father was still shuffling through in disbelief. But why didn't you tell us? My mother finally asked, her voice small. All these years we thought... You thought what you wanted to think, I replied, not unkindly. None of you ever asked what I was actually doing. You were too busy assuming I had failed. My father looked up at me, his face a complex mixture of emotions I'd never seen before. Shock, confusion, and something that might have been respect, or perhaps regret. There's more, I said, pointing to another document in the pile. That's a foundation I established 5 years ago. It funds educational initiatives for underprivileged youth interested in green technology and sustainable business. I named it after Grandpa Joseph. My grandfather Joseph had been the one person in the family who had supported my decision to leave, who had believed I needed to forge my own path. He had passed away shortly after I left, and I had been told not to bother coming to the funeral. Grandpa always said there was more than one way to build a legacy, I continued. He understood what the rest of you didn't, that success doesn't have to look the same for everyone. Rebecca was now looking through the documents as well, her perfect composure cracking. These initiatives, they're incredible. She looked up at me with new eyes. Why did you keep this from us? From me? We're family. Are we? I asked quietly. When was the last time any of you asked about my life with genuine interest? When was the last time I was invited to a family event because you actually wanted me there, not just to remind everyone of what happens when you disobey the Peterson plan? No one answered. They couldn't. I didn't come here today to gloat, or to throw my success in your faces. I continued. I came because despite everything, you're still my family. And I thought maybe it was time to build some bridges, if you're interested. My father stood up slowly, his usual commanding presence diminished by shock. You did all this on your own? I did, I said simply. With no Peterson connections, no family name to open doors, just hard work and belief in something that mattered to me. He extended his hand toward me. Not the triumphant gesture he had greeted me with earlier, but something hesitant, almost humble. Then I've underestimated you, son. It appears we all have. I took his hand, feeling the strange weight of the moment. This wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It was something more complicated, recognition. I think, my mother said, her voice thick with emotion, that we need to rethink a few things. Including that will. My father nodded slowly. Yes, I believe we do. James looked like he'd been slapped, while Rebecca was still staring at the photos of my company headquarters with something like awe. Actually, I said, I don't want or need anything from your will. I came here today for something else entirely. What? My father asked. I looked around at the faces of my family. The people who had dismissed and excluded me for 15 years, who were now seeing me clearly, perhaps for the first time. A chance to be part of this family again. Not the successful businessman, not the billionaire. Just Michael, your son, your brother, your nephew, your cousin. That's all I've ever wanted. My mother stood and crossed to me, tears streaming down her face. Without a word, she wrapped her arms around me. After a moment's hesitation, I felt my sister join the embrace. I'm so sorry, Rebecca whispered. I never thought. I was so caught up in trying to be what Dad wanted. Over their shoulders, I watched my father. He remained standing, his expression still processing the seismic shift that had just occurred in his perfectly ordered world. Then, slowly, he walked around the table toward us. "It seems," he said quietly, "that I've been wrong about many things." He cleared his throat. "Perhaps we could start again." As my family gathered around me, the whispered apologies and tentative questions beginning to flow, I realized that the secret I had kept for 15 years had indeed changed everything. But what had changed most wasn't our financial standings or the family hierarchy. What had changed was the possibility of something I had long ago given up on, the chance for us to become a real family at last. The envelope that had held my secret now lay open on the table, its contents scattered among the fine china and crystal, a bridge between the life I had built for myself and the family I had never stopped hoping to reconnect with. It wasn't going to be easy. 15 years of hurt and dismissal couldn't be erased in a single afternoon. But as I looked around at their faces, seeing me, truly seeing me, perhaps for the first time, I felt something I hadn't experienced in this house for a very long time: hope. In the months that followed that fateful family reunion, things changed in ways I never could have predicted. The news of my connection to Green Horizon Technologies eventually leaked to the business press, and overnight I went from being the Peterson family's shameful secret to their most celebrated member. The irony wasn't lost on me. My father, always the pragmatist, worked hard to rebuild our relationship, though I sometimes wondered how much was genuine remorse and how much was calculated networking. Old habits die hard after all. But there were moments of authenticity that surprised me, like when he asked for a tour of my headquarters and spent the entire time asking thoughtful questions about the technology rather than the profit margins. Rebecca perhaps changed the most. The revelation seemed to crack something open in her, the perfect, obedient daughter suddenly questioning the path she'd been on. 6 months after the reunion, she approached me about establishing a sustainable development division within Peterson Real Estate. We now meet for coffee weekly, slowly rebuilding the sibling relationship that had withered away. My mother alternates between overwhelming guilt and fierce pride, sometimes within the same conversation. She keeps a framed photo of my company headquarters on the mantel now, right next to Rebecca's wedding portrait. As for James and the extended family, most have come around, though some relationships remain strained by the dramatic shift in family dynamics. Money and success have always spoken loudly in the Peterson family, for better or worse. But the most meaningful change wasn't in how they saw me, it was in how I saw myself. For 15 years, I had defined myself in opposition to my family, carrying the weight of their disapproval even as I built something I was proud of. Now, I was free of that burden, free to be both a Peterson and entirely my own person. The annual family reunion this year was held at my estate, a symbolic passing of the torch that wasn't lost on anyone. As I watched my relatives mingle on my lawn, the Peterson competitive spirit still evident but tempered now with something like respect, I reflected on how completely things had transformed. The manila envelope that had changed everything now sits framed in my office, empty, its contents distributed and known. A reminder that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply reveal your truth and let the chips fall where they may. In the end, I hadn't just been written back into my parents' will. I had been written back into the family story, not as the cautionary tale they had cast me as for so long, but as a chapter they now proudly claimed as their own. And while there's a certain satisfaction in that vindication, what matters more is that for the first time in 15 years, when someone asks about my family, I can answer without that old familiar pain. Because sometimes, the greatest inheritance isn't money or property or even a family name. Sometimes, it's the chance to be seen, to be known, to belong, not despite who you are, but because of it. That, more than any amount in a bank account, is what makes me truly rich.